Hi, it's Todd of Todd's Workshop and Todd Cutler here, and today we're going to talk about these daggers here. There's nothing special about them in the sense of there's no theme, there's no direction to this video. It's just the last few weeks' production for me, and they've all got something interesting about them, so I'll talk you through them. Right, first up is this Bollock Dagger here. I'll have a look at that. So this is based on one in the Rothenburg collection in Germany, dated around mid to late 15th century, probably later I would say, and then we'll come back down to the shape there. Now it's quite a fancy piece, rather obviously. So it's got an inscription on the top of the pommel here in Latin, which reads, English translation of, "The right hand of the Lord hath wrought strength." So mottos like that, things that you often see engraved on blades and on bits of hilt furniture, very often though on blades. And yeah, I mean, it's just a nice catchy little thing. References to God and strength are very common. Other than that, you've got a strong double-sided blade here, diamond section blade. The original of this dagger had a really weird, freaky square blade. But to be honest, this is a more popular form for me, and I am a commercial enterprise. If people want that completely accurate reproduction, that's fine. This is based on some pieces from the Portable Antiquities scheme here in England, where people who find components, in the case of this one it was just the guard and the pommel, there was no blade. They dated it to around about 1350. It's quite a small dagger, which daggers very often were, either at that time or later in fact. Daggers are not always great big long things, they're often quite small and handy. That changes a little bit with time period and of course with function. But what was really curious about it was the nagel here. Now I've always associated those with later knives, around about 1500 or a little bit after. So the dating for 1350 for this one I think is much too early. I suspect it really is around about the 1500 mark. Now this one is based on a piece in the Metropolitan Museum in New York. Again, nice double-sided blade, very slim, very slender handle. This is a very Germanic kind of a feel to this grip, flaring out at the top here. The other thing is, it's just got protection and nagel on just one side of the guard, which again is a feature of early 16th century German daggers. So I'm going to show you another one. So this is one from private collection, but again you can see it's this sort of half guard on it. Quite a flared top. So those two are substantially fairly similar in form. You know, they flare out, they're thin skinny handles. They've both got a guard on one side of the blade there, you can see. So we have a bronze guard on here. Very often in museums you'll see that listed as copper alloy. And what they mean by that, they won't use the word bronze. What they mean by that is historically different craftsmen's recipes changed, the purity of the metals that were involved in making the alloys of bronze was different. And indeed often polluted. So you'll often find lead and silver and zinc in bronze mixes, which are predominantly going to be copper and tin. So really there's no way of saying it is this type of bronze. It's not bronze 3B or something like that, because there's just a sliding scale of all these different ingredients. So they get over that by saying copper alloy. That's why you see copper alloy as the described material. But what is true for this dagger, and indeed the previous one, is you can see that they've both got quite bulky pommels, but the blades are not particularly massive. That means that they would always, if these were solid, overbalance in the scabbard. They're not. If you ever see a big pommel on a dagger, you can bet that it's not solid. All right? It's the same with any dagger kind. This dagger here is Rondel Dagger, dated round about 1400. It's French. So you can see it's got quite thin rondels on it. Now, I was just saying that you don't get massive bulks of material in dagger handles because they overbalance. Now that's true as well. Rondels very often have really thick guards, but they're never solid. They're just not. So these ones are solid, but they're quite thin. Next up we have an English Rondel Dagger, round about 1450, based on one in the Royal Armouries. A little bit different on the grip. I think it was a black grip on the Royal Armouries one, but otherwise pretty similar. Strong single-edged blade. Single edge, you know, relatively not common on cheaper knives. There's nothing fancy, there's nothing flash about this. This is definitely a man-at-arms type dagger, not a nobleman's. But what is also quite notable, I'll just show you on the side here on these rondels, is they have an organic spacer in between them. Basically that's just a sheet of leather in this case, sometimes horn, sometimes wood. Little bit of dishing on the top here to give it a bit of strength. Bottom rondel much plainer. Very, very normal. I would say without a shadow of a doubt this would be an English-made piece. Like I say, plain, utility, but you know, nonetheless functional. Next up we have this French piece here, or French-inspired. So the reason I say it's French-inspired is if we look at the grip here, it's got this barleycorn twist on the top half of it. It's a peculiarly French thing. It's not something that I've ever seen on English daggers. You see it quite a lot on French Bollock daggers. I think, I might be wrong, but I think even more towards the south of France. So it's definitely local, geographically a local thing. Doesn't really seem to spread outside. But then you get another slightly French one, which is this. So that is a triple Bollock dagger. So as you can see, there we go. So it's actually a Bollock dagger. Now, I probably don't have to tell you, usually they come in pairs. For whatever reason, this one has got 3. The French seem to love doing the 3-ball Bollock daggers. The Flemish are quite keen on them, and the Germans are quite keen. But it really was a French thing. English, we don't like 3 balls at all. We like 2. Now, what is also odd about this is it has the triangular blade. I'm going to see if I can show you. Now, if you look at this, well, I'll just slowly rotate it. Whenever you look at it, you pick it up, you look at the dagger, and you think that the blade has been put on irregularly, put non-central to the hilt. It's just a really annoying thing about triple-edged Bollock daggers, or triple-edged daggers at all, really, is it doesn't matter what way you look at it, it looks like the blade has been put on squiff. Now, the other thing is that, of course, this blade is against the Geneva Convention. So I think it was 1922 the Geneva Convention was signed, and the idea was that, for those of you unfamiliar with it, was that there would be rules to war, that you couldn't do particularly unpleasant things to people. And one of those was the French, again, coming back to the French, did like triangular and star form, cruciform blades on bayonets and daggers and things like that. Military and civilian. And they give a wound which is very difficult to stitch up because of the way the collagen works. It gives a difficult wound to stitch up, and if you can stitch it up, it's going to be messy. And so those dagger forms were banned by the Geneva Convention. Now that means that our militaries, all signatories to the convention, our militaries cannot use triangular blades. Civilian, you can. So it is illegal militarily in the modern day and age, but it is not illegal in a civilian sense. Next up is this Bollock dagger here. This is a spare that I made for the king originally. So it is nominally, well, supposedly around the year 1300. Really, flared top, that sort of interesting sort of blade geometry, the step on it, and so on. This really dates it towards the end of the 15th century. But as is the nature, I've done a good film, a good video actually about films and why you choose props in certain ways. But as was the nature, we needed 5 different Bollock daggers. Now this one here is another English rondel dagger. We can see that. Dated around 1350, 1370. Now we've got a more conventional pommel at the top here. Again, a hollow pommel as you would expect. But if we compare this to, let's say, this other English rondel dagger from around about 100 years later, this one, they've both got a rondel at the bottom. But this one, the earlier one, has now got a conventional pommel at the top. Rondel daggers didn't arrive fully formed. They didn't arrive as a complete design. They developed, like all things develop, I suppose. And it developed with a pommel on the top and a rondel guard at the bottom. And then, over time, the top pommel was replaced by a rounder rondel guard. Here we have a rather curious Lanch neck era dagger. So this is sort of 1520, 1530, something like that. Very flared top. This sort of half ring guard on it here. And the very, very characteristic skinny handle, flared top, which is just so Lanch-necked. The other thing that is completely Lanch-necked about this is fashion was just so much more important than practicality. Look at the clothes. That handle there, my God, it looks great sitting on your belt. It's not so great for holding, but actually it looks horrendous. But actually it cups your hand really quite well. You can see it's all nestled in here and there, and it is not remotely as uncomfortable as it looks like. So what you need to consider with dagger handles as well is they're used, you know, once, rapidly, fast, they do the job, they're done. You don't train with your dagger for hour after hour. You see it a little bit obviously in the manuals, but it's not something that people just do continuously for hour after hour during the day. It's not using a hammer where you develop blisters after 8 hours or whatever. It is quick and fast, and you know what? Most of the time, almost all of the time, it sits on your belt looking damn cool, right? So actually, how it looks is also really important, not whether it's comfortable or not. Another Lanch-necked piece here. Absolute classic from the Royal Armouries again. S-Guard Quillen dagger, double-edged blade. This one, in fact, is even a little bit longer than the original. I think the original is probably only about sort of yay long, really. I think about 220 mil, something like that. English, apparently dated around about 1400. As far as I know, there's just nothing else like it out there. I call it a spiderweb quillen. If you look at the pommel here, it is a spiderweb. I would say that without a shadow of a doubt, it's a spiderweb. Again, very curious decoration on here. Who knows what it's about, really. Copper alloy bronze guards. Blade again, nice and substantial. It's quite long, I think, 12 inches, 12 and a bit inches, so 300 mil, something like that. Quite thick. Curiously, the blade was just slightly thicker than the guard. I don't know if you can quite see that there. So you have to chamfer in to get the blade to fit the guard. It was like that on the original. It's not just me making a mistake. I'm copying the mistake somebody else made. And then this funny little cutout on the back here. What's it for? No idea at all. I think it just looks cool. Goodness me, this is the Royal Armouries Day, actually. So, next up, second from last, is Henry VIII's dagger. Now, this is based on a piece in the Royal Armouries in Leeds, and we've got a lovely little shell guard here. So this is, and it's dated, I think, about 1520. Nice little quillons here with sort of an acorn finial on it. Single-edged blade, not massively thick, not massively long. I think the original may have been hollow ground, and it had arms engraved on it, if I remember rightly. But, and this is where it completely differs, this is missing on the original. So on the dagger that is in the Royal Armouries, they replaced, I believe, in the 1960s, they had the guard and the blade. They had no grip, no pommel. So they put on a black wooden, you know, presentable enough grip, but it is not the original, and it is not like the original. We don't know what the original was. So I have worked on the basis of the styles of the time. It's quite flared, it's quite skinny here, and it comes out to, he was a king of course, a nice ostentatious top here, a lot of chisel work on there in the steel. It reflects the work on the shell guard here. So again, just show you there, we've got this sort of bulbous pommel there, and then we've got the shell guard. Did it ever look like that? Well, you know what? Maybe. We don't know. But it is a plausible style for this kind of knife. And then the last up, we have another one from the Royal Armouries. Royal Armouries one has got 2 fullers here. I've just put a single fuller in this one. There we go. And that's it for today. I've talked you through 14 different daggers, last few weeks' production. Yeah, if there's any questions or any comments you want to make about any of them, please fire away. It's the comments that really keep me going, you know, and I do try to interact as best I can. So I'll give you a close-up now, and we'll go through.